All right, great. Hi, I'm Neil Diercks. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I teach songwriting courses here for Berkeley Online. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about the video tool, which I think is an amazing tool for connecting students and really creating a great learning environment for them. I use this video tool for pretty much all my feedback. I also find it's very useful for things like announcement posts and class forum posts. Especially for the initial announcement post, I like to use that because it gives the students a face, gives them a welcome with a human being rather than just text reading. So it allows them to sort of meet me, get to know my personality, and I also ask that the students post a short video just introducing themselves. I usually give them a few prompt questions, just telling them, pronounce your name, where you're from, some music background, just some simple things. And I found this is a really wonderful tool in connecting the class together because it's a whole different ballgame when you have people connecting and you have a video and you actually feel like you've met that person compared to just a list of names, icons, and some text. It's so much more personal. You really get a read on each individual in the classroom, and they get to meet one another. And I feel there's just multiple bonuses in this. Kind of the long and short umbrella of this, I feel it absolutely enhances the entire student learning experience and the whole classroom experience for everyone, because early on in the course, people can feel connected, they get to know one another. It increases class participation, which is great. As I'm sure all of you know, that the more active your class is, the more they're interacting with one another, the better the learning experience is. An active class is a great class. This really promotes interaction. I've noticed that the folks who are using this video tool frequently get better feedback, more frequent feedback from one another in the classroom. I recommend that they post when they're posting an assignment or a practice, that they do a brief video post with it, maybe just 30 seconds long because it's so easy to do. And I noticed that those who post a quick video get many more responses and much more elaborate feedback rather than just, hey, nice job. They'll get suggestions, and it has just creates a stronger connection within the course, and so that really enriches the environment. And what I like about that, from sort of an instructor's point of view, for ease of use, what you realize is because there's more interaction in the class, I find that a lot of the students are sort of doing some of their own problem solving. They're having discussions, which is great. And so really the class is still going on and it's still active even when you're not there. Obviously that can happen in text, but I find it's not as in-depth or as interactive. But now with the video tool, great conversations, communications, interactions, folks posting videos back and forth to one another, which is excellent because it keeps it alive even when you're not there, and then you can come in and add to the conversations. As far as feedback from sort of instructor to student, huge difference I feel. Simply as we all know, there's so much goes into nonverbal communication. I mean, you can communicate so much more through voice, through somebody seeing you, than just merely text. We all know those experiences where we've sent a text or an email and it gets misinterpreted and somebody thinks something terribly different than what we were wanting to express. And I remember early on when the online courses were mostly all text, that I would spend a lot of time emoticons, overly explaining things to make sure I was getting the tone. I mean, it's really hard to express tone and excitement and thoughts in text. And I'd be writing these just long paragraphs and, which is great. My typing got fast, but, this is so much easier, so much more effective. And in a shorter amount of time, you can get more across. And the reactions from students in the class have been great. You know, I mean, I have to joke. Somebody, I think that the first term this was started, somebody said, "Wow, this is like a real classroom," and I'm like, "Hey, it is a real classroom. It's just online." But the point was well taken that they felt so much more involved. But so I find that my feedback now is much more poignant. It seems to come across much more easily. People seem to get the idea. So, I mean, you can combine this video, like I might type a little example of something they have to visualize, but it can be explained much easier when you in a video setting. So they're getting the students are getting richer, deeper feedback, and the time it takes is shorter, which is a bonus because you know we all have limited amounts of time. And I also know on the reverse, you know, if you can't get something across to somebody, I feel in this day and age, quickly and poignantly, that people kind of tune out. Nobody, like if they pull up a feedback and it's 2 paragraphs long, the chances of them reading it are kind of like diminishing. So somebody's much more engaged in hearing you talk to them personally. And again, it gets your personality across. You can connect with a student more effectively. And also I find that as you learn or get to know the students through their own videos, you become a lot better at catering your feedback to really fit their sort of learning strategy. As we all know, you know, we're trying to get a certain amount of information across, some ideas, concepts. So the information, in a sense, stays the same, but each person processes differently. So I feel I get a much better read on the students, how to present to each one in a way that they're going to be most receptive. And so that has really worked out well. The feedback I've gotten about the feedback being video is really wonderful. People feel very connected. They enjoy it. It's just been, as I mentioned before, it's been a huge game changer. I have lots of thoughts on this. Let me think for more. Again, using the class forum is a great tool. I try to do it for every feedback. And I find the more you do it, this is just for those of you who are just starting doing it, at first it feels a little weird. I remember the first term we had this available, it felt awkward and you can feel a little self-conscious. I do remember I was getting ready to post the initial posts for the announcement and the standard class forum stuff I put on before the class, and then I was like running around looking at lighting and like, what am I wearing? And it was like, and then I was like, wow, this is getting crazy. And but after that, you can just get up, go on, and you don't think about it. And I feel it also, from my own energy level, there's something about, we're all musicians, so I think whatever we're doing in music right now, we were probably at one point we were all performers. Some of us obviously still are, but there's a certain performance aspect to this where I find that it's like when I press record, it's like I'm on, and it's it could be 2 o'clock in the morning, it could be 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's all of a sudden you come to life, and to me it's a great thing. It keeps me on my game, whereas like if I'm typing, I could be dozing off or whatever. Here, it's like it involves me in the class more. So I think that's a bonus. I'm trying to think of other thoughts for the chats. Video I feel is invaluable. At first, I believe we only had the video available for the chat, but that was a game changer too. I remember the days when it was just text chat, and it was just like it felt so strange to me because it was silence. I was like, this is music school, and we're in silence. I'm like, it was strange, but now it's wonderful where you can get the class interacting. And at first, that was the only spot they could really meet each other. But I feel, again, the video tool with chat is invaluable because, again, now you can have an open discussion. And I'll speak a little bit of how I utilize chats. And I know every instructor is different, and everybody has a different plan. And I think you have to find what works best for your specific course. What I like is, bringing the chat together. Everybody gets on video. And what I like to go through is cover, first of all, I use like kind of the beginning, sort of like an office hour. I like to cover any questions from, say, the previous week. Say my chat's on a Tuesday, and we're in lesson 4. And I like to say, hey, any questions back from lesson 3, cover that. So there can be discussion, which is nice because right at the beginning, you're hearing students interact or ask questions, so that kind of breaks the ice. Then once that's covered, I tend to like to go to the current lesson. I will usually have kind of a plan of what I like to kind of step them through my main points on main areas of, maybe over the different terms of teaching. I found some, like, I have some of my own notes where I found, like, okay, here's an area where typically I answer a lot of questions on, so I'll address those in the chat. And then what's great about that, there's the video interaction, so it's very human, it's real, and you can do everything from screen sharing. You can play audio examples. I mean, that the Cisco system is pretty limitless on what you can do. Whiteboard, all those tools are great, but I feel like the great anchor of that is really the video presentation, because then there's really somebody there. It's not just a cursor moving and somebody typing. And then I like to open the chat up if I'm able to cover the material for the current week. I then like to open it up for what I just call like songwriting related topics. And obviously, since the courses I teach are songwriting, but branching out further, from just the typical lesson material. And this, I feel, opens it up sort of for additional kind of practical application, just because I have some background in music industry, both sides, from as a writer and as on the business side. There's always typically questions, about sort of, it might be legal issues or just living and working as a songwriter. How do we bring the tools, the specifics of the class into, like, what does that mean day to day? How do you live? How do you, what's your day like? Or, what are some issues I should address? And it's great because it opens up, I think it just enriches the whole course material, gives the students more excitement to go back and study, and then they can see how it applies. The other thing I've done, and I encourage folks to in the course to do this, is post topics in the class forum that they'd like to address. And I will usually say, again, if lesson material has been covered in the chat, we can go into some of these things. And so then it also becomes more catered to the specific class, which I find is useful. And then they're sort of co-creators of what the chat gets to be. And I feel that's an important part. I tend to personally use chat as sort of a balance where I like to open things up for their discussion and interaction, and only use a certain part of it as sort of lecture and let them ask questions, because I think they're more involved. I feel with a course, there's, they're logging onto the course, they're reading text, they're watching videos, they're listening to audio examples, so everything's coming at them. And I feel they need an opportunity for, discussion, sharing thoughts, whether it's even just like, hey, I'm really having trouble with this specific topic. But I always feel it's like you want to be careful of, like, having just another, that the chat should really be that, an interaction, rather than here's me just giving another lecture at you. I mean, in that case, I could just post a video, which is great, which also, in turn, the video tool has freed up more discussion time for chats, because it's made me more aware of, like, oh, okay, if this is something I'm just directing, just a concept, or maybe I've gotten a number of questions from different students on the same topic, I can go post a video on that, put it in the class forum, and then just direct everybody to watch that. So, like, the chat doesn't have to be just a lecture one direction at them. It's now an interactive experience. So I think that's a great tool as well. I'm trying to think of other thoughts. Again, it's just to kind of summarize, creates a great sense of community in the course, and I think that's really important. And I probably touched on this earlier, but an important thing I think in all music classes, but I can only speak to for the songwriting classes, is we have talented musicians, and they're sharing, they're kind of sharing their soul. They're putting their music up there, and that can be, an intimidating situation to a group of 20 people you've never met before. And I find that having this video tool really breaks the ice. You can really feel the warmth of somebody, the openness. You really can sort of also set the tone with your own videos, set the tone for a very supportive, nurturing, creative environment, so people feel safe posting. And I feel this tool has really been a game changer in that. And the more people interact, you see, the more open they are to try things. And I feel, especially in the courses that I'm teaching, that's really helpful, that the students aren't reticent about posting. They're not scared about what they're doing, that they're like, hey, let me just try this out. Here's what I studied. How does this work? And then it's a much more interactive class. So that, again, is a great tool. I really can't say enough about. Actually, time to me is so crucial. Time is so important. We all have crazy lives. We're all doing more. The more technology we get, it's like it doesn't always seem to make our lives easier. We're just expected to do more. But this is an example where it's like, I feel like I'm getting more done in a better way in a shorter amount of time. And it's like, from that, I look at like, man, I guess I always think of it in two ways, like with both words, efficient and effective, because efficient can just seem like fast and quick, but is it effective? Like, I think it's more efficient and more effective. And what you also hit on is so important. It's fun. And that's, it's like you're going to be much more active in your class, and your students are going to feel that. Because I think at heart, like I mentioned, I think most of us as musicians, we are performers, even when we're not playing our instrument. We're like, hey, it's your moment, and they can see your passion for music, because it's like that, the people that Berkeley attracts are like amazing. And it's like people get to see you even, more. It's like, it's the difference between, a kind of a cool example. There was a guy, I was reading a book from him, a while back, and I was like, okay, this seems pretty good. And he was presenting some ideas that I really had to kind of ponder. And then I happened to click on, I found a link for him on TED Talks. And I was like, I watch TED Talks all the time, and I saw a link, and I was like, wow, I totally get this guy now. And it was like, now when I read the book, it's like I kind of have that picture in mind. And it was like, but the TED Talks was the game changer. And it was like, before with the book, I was like, but I think that just makes a huge difference. It's fun, it's effective. It's made me more excited. And it's funny. It feels less like work. It feels like, hey, like we're really making a difference. And I have to honestly say that I believe, like, my personal feeling in this day and age, especially when we're working with I'd say like age range 20s and younger, there's a different expectation than, say, when I was a kid, or where it's like, I'm just going to read it, I'll kind of be in my little cocoon and check it out. It's like, if you think of all the media that they're exposed to, it's like everything's in your face, and it's you have to, like, I believe it, you have to be an entertainer. Like, you can't be old school. Well, perfect example, a friend of mine was telling me about, because he knows I do online teaching, and he goes, man, I took 2 courses, for I think it was something from like that Apple University, and he was talking, nothing to do with music, but he was saying, I think they were like history courses or something. He goes, man, I couldn't believe the difference the instructor makes. And he said one course was, he said it was just a videotape of like this kind of old school professor was just lecturing up at the podium, blah, 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 blah. And he said the other guy, he goes, you could tell he was actually an experienced lecturer. He said the first course, he goes, I don't remember anything from the course. And these are, I believe these were like Harvard courses. I don't know. But he said he said that with the second guy, he goes, he was so animated. He goes, he was a real entertainer and he was brilliant. And he goes, like, man, he goes, all of a sudden I was engaged in that class. And I mean, to me, that makes a huge difference. And, I mean, especially on the bigger scope of things like student retention, are people going to stay active in the, in the classes? And I think I think it's like anything else. That's gonna occur in like the first week and maybe even the first day. I mean, most things you kind of decide. It's sort of easy to sign up for it, and until later, it's like, okay, you sign up for, oh, this sounds like a great idea, and then a few weeks later you get into the class. But it's like in that beginning time, it's like how does it hit me right away, and that's going to be the decision. If I'm like, it's not going to be as effective. So anyways, I think I really feel it's almost like I kind of put it on myself as like a challenge, kind of a fun challenge of like, hey, I've got to engage them, and it's just like being on stage when you're like, hey, I got to keep my audience active. I can just sit there and play my songs and be like, and like people are like, oh, that's nice, thanks for playing for yourself. But it's like part of your role as an entertainer. So it's like I just think of it as the same thing. It's like I got to keep them engaged and like because the material is so great, but especially with some folks, depending on their background, it might feel daunting, and that's easy to like tune out right at that moment. So how can we make it fun, exciting, and it's like I always feel it's like I'm competing with MTV and blah 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 blah, video editing. So it's like we gotta be on top of it. So it makes Berklee stand out because it's Berklee's cutting edge. It's like you're teaching the music of the time. So it's like having this to me is like, yeah, absolutely, it's got to be this way.